So welcome back. This is video 3 of 4 on the 4 P's of a smile above smile design. Today I'm going to cover the third P, proportion. In a general sense, proportion is how the teeth relate to each other in dimension or size. So at a very basic level, you can have great individual teeth, but if they're out of proportion to the smile as a whole, it won't look harmonious. So this video will cover some of the technical sides to this topic, and I'm excited to share how proportion contributes to a great smile design. So under the topic of proportion, there are 4 points that I want to talk about. One being the width to length ratio of the front teeth in particular. Gradation, I will explain what that is. We'll talk about the contact points between the teeth, and then we'll talk a little bit about the golden proportions. So if we talk about the width to length ratio of the teeth, we're talking mainly about the front teeth here. In a study that looked at thousands and thousands of natural, unworn, unrestored front teeth of people of all ages and all races, it was found that ideally the teeth should be about 80% as wide as they are long. They found that these natural teeth ranged between 10.4 and just over 11 millimeters in length, and generally they were just over 8 to just over 9 millimeters in width. So that gives us a width to length ratio of about 80%. 75 to 80% is considered ideal. If the width to length ratio is not correct, as you see in these two cases here, due to wear of the teeth, as the case on the left, or due to the way the teeth have been restored on the right, you can see that it results in a less than attractive arrangement. So wear of the teeth, like you see on the left, can result in loss of length of tooth structure, and then you get a tooth that is almost square in proportions instead of rectangular. On the right-hand side, you can see some crowns have been put over teeth where possibly there's been some gum recession and root exposure, and the crown of the tooth has extended up onto the root, and that provides a tooth that is too long relative to the width, and that also does not look particularly attractive. Here you see a case where on the left, a young woman has had her smile treated. At one point, she had a space between her upper front teeth, and that space was closed by treating the two upper front teeth only, by putting white filling or bonding material into the space to close the space between her two front teeth. The result is two front teeth that are too wide relative to their length and a less than attractive smile. On the right-hand side, we have done some porcelain veneers on a number of the teeth and have spread that spacing out over several teeth, over a number of teeth. Instead of just filling it all in one place, we've taken that space and distributed it amongst other teeth. So we end up with much better width to length ratios and better overall proportions, and a resultant smile that is much more attractive. The next topic under proportion is something that we call gradation. And by this, we simply mean that when you look at something, the closer it is to your eye, the larger it appears. And as it gets farther away from you, it begins to get smaller. So the teeth, when you look at them, should get smaller from the front to the back, from the eye teeth back, even though physically the teeth at the back, the molars, are larger than the teeth at the front. They should not appear that way. Because they're farther away in the arch, they should look smaller. So if we look at this diagram here, you can see how the front teeth actually look bigger, and as we go back in the mouth, the molars and the teeth farther back should appear smaller than the ones at the front. So here is an example of where gradation has been properly handled, where the teeth at the back are getting smaller visually, even though they're not physically smaller. The next part under proportion that I'd like to address is what we call the contact points. And these are the areas where the teeth touch. And these contact points should move from near the biting edge of the tooth towards the gum line, the farther back in the mouth you go. The front teeth, they have a contact point or contact area that is closer to the incisal edge or the biting edge of the teeth than the next contact point on either side. The next contact point should actually be a little closer to the gum. And as we go back in the mouth, you see the contact points move closer to the gum as we go farther back in the mouth. And again, here is an example of what this looks like in an ideal setup. The last topic under proportion that I want to discuss is something that we call the golden proportion, or the ratio of 1.6 to 1 to 0.6, which is known as phi or phi, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And this is an old, very ancient mathematical relationship that relates back to the Greeks and is found in many aspects of what's known as classical beauty. If we arbitrarily assign a width, a ratio of 1 to the lateral incisor, which is the tooth that's next to the front tooth, then the front tooth should have a proportion or a width of 1.6, whereas the canine to the other side of the lateral incisor should have a width of 0.6, as this is when it's viewed from the front, not from the side, but from the front. So if we look at the smile from the front, the lateral should have a width of 1. The front tooth should have a width, relative width of 1.6, and the canine, as viewed from the front, should have a width of 0.6. If we talk about proportions here, we can talk about facial proportions as well. And here are two people that are considered to have ideal facial proportions. This all goes into, again, the balance and symmetry and looking back at this golden proportion.
So, in regards to proportion, I've talked about how the individual teeth need to have certain proportions and how they need to relate to each other proportionally as well. In the next video, I will finish with the fourth P, perimeter. By this, I mean all the components that surround the actual teeth themselves and should be considered when designing a great smile.